happen. It's been probably, I think actually it's been over a year now since we last have you. So I also want to talk about whatever other things that are going on in the world and before this happened and what's to come. So what are some new things that you want to kind of share with the audience and stuff? What are some new things going on that we want to kind of focus on or pay attention to?
Well, first of all, I would like to say that the Silver Legion is still quite active. We haven't given up. We haven't stopped. We don't typically announce our actions because a lot of what we do, we need to do covertly. Yeah. And we also, I've seen a tendency with other groups to sort of say, oh yeah, we did this or that, and then nothing happens, and there's, it's a whole bunch of bragging and nothing changes. Yeah. So we tend to prefer to speak softly and carry a big stick approach to things, if you're familiar with that phrase.
Right.
We've been looking a lot at the exopolitical situation. Like, I think those who followed me, I guess, from the beginning know that it's not just one or two groups that are involved here. There are hundreds of different groups, all of whom have different agendas, some of whom have competing agendas, some of whom try to present themselves very positively to humanity, but have basically their own desire for a piece of the pie, as it were. So largely we've been mostly involved at the exopolitical level, as sort of keeping opportunistic parasites from becoming, active here.
Right. Yeah.
We've been watching the geopolitical situation quite closely. When the first stuff started to ripple through the internet and through the whisper lines about COVID back in January, the word I got then is that it wasn't going to be as big a problem as it looked, because at the time it looked very scary. There were all kinds of rumors coming from China, right? Right. And we still know that China is not truthful. I'm sorry, anybody who's taking China at its word, you can't take a dictatorship at its word ever.
Oh, yeah.
They're lying about something. If not to us, then to their own people, right? But it was looking extremely scary in January, if you saw the footage then of people falling over in the streets and, like, totalitarian shutdowns and things like that. But the word I got from my people then is that it wasn't as bad as it looked, and just sort of, wait and see, time will tell sort of stuff. Where it comes to, like, say, American politics and stuff, I would have to say that you're going to have to wait and see on that, because there is indications that there are going to be massive radical changes that will shock many people. And some of these things that look pretty innocuous, like the whole Russiagate mess or the Flynn matter, could end up being major pieces of the puzzle.
Gotcha.
Take what your I won't call them colleagues, but take what your counterparts in the mainstream media say with a grain of salt, because most of them are given messages that they are required to say and have zero information about what's actually happening, right? They're not briefed on it either. And with the change in the laws against propagandizing to domestic populations, basically, the United States used to have a law against using propaganda on its own citizens. That law is no longer there. Those protections are no longer in place. So take everything you hear from the mainstream and the supposed official sources with a grain of salt, and be prepared to see massive changes starting all of a sudden. I will say, for the record, if you've heard of the Q phenomenon.
I have not personally.
Okay, yeah, so the QAnon and the Q stuff, from what my sources tell me, this appears to be a legit mouthpiece of white hats. but I'm not working with them. I'm not coordinating with them. I don't have insider information that's reliable on them, so I can't say much more than that, other than my people say that they are legit.
Interesting. Okay, so then obviously, such as myself, if people aren't familiar with that, you suggest looking into that more then.
Yeah, I would say if you're not familiar with the Q stuff, dealing with the Chans, with 8chan and all of that, it can be a little bit Byzantine for people who are just starting out. They are designed to offend you, and this is a kind of self-defense phenomenon for keeping away the quote-unquote normies. So, yeah, understand if you go to the Chans, it's going to be hateful. It's going to be disgusting. You're going to hear stuff that shocks you. You're going to hear racism. You're going to hear stuff against LGBT. And if those are sacred cows for you, it's going to scare you away. These things are deliberate, and they are meant to scare away people who are not psychologically equipped, basically, to question and to go through this information. Essentially, if you're the kind of person who freaks out over a pronoun, you're not going to live a moment in 8chan.
Right. I haven't been talking about, but I especially wanted to ask you, what do you feel about the release of the videos the Pentagon has released last month?
Oh, well, so this is also in association with that Tom DeLonge movement, right?
Right.
We have a terminology for things like this. Limited hangout.
Gotcha.
Have you heard that term? Are you familiar with what it is?
I've heard it before. I kind of know, but not really.
So a limited hangout is when you have something that you want to keep under wraps. You sort of designate a designated leaker or a designated mouthpiece to sort of go out and be the champion of that information, and thus release the information that you want while holding or obscuring the information that you don't want released. So Tom DeLonge, if you look at the people who are working with Tom DeLonge, it's big names in the defense industry, but it's also people like John Podesta. And if you're at all familiar with your internet conspiracy theories, well, the name Podesta is kind of up there with the names Epstein and Clinton, and then things like that. Yeah, so, anytime I see that kind of involvement, I have to go, I don't think we're getting the whole story here.
Right. Well, I know those videos were leaked, probably a few years ago, and so it was kind of interesting that now they just released those 3 videos.
Yeah, and it makes me wonder about the timing, like why now?
Right.
It's getting to the point, I think, where they can't keep a lid on things like that anymore.
Right.
And I think that might be why. But we call this a kind of a controlled disclosure. We're pushing for full and absolute disclosure, and I know a lot of groups that are this kind of dribbling out information. It's not going to save those assholes. They might think it will, but there is no game plan that they can come up with that will actually see them remain intact and doing what they're doing now. Sorry, but no, you're just not getting that chance. Game over.
Yeah.
At some point, they'll realize it. Hopefully, before they die.
And so, are those videos legit? Because I know there's people questioning if they were even legitimate videos or if they were just completely fake. Do you believe they were legitimate videos?
I haven't viewed them. I've heard of them, but I haven't viewed them. I mean, I have my own encounters with entities and UFOs and things like that I no longer get excited over somebody's UFO sighting. It's
right.
Like, okay, but yeah, I haven't felt the need to look at them. I'm going to say that if the Pentagon is releasing them, if these mainstream sources are releasing them, chances are it's not somebody's CGI thing from their CGI school.
Right. Right.
Chances are it's probably a legitimate posting. I suspect in these cases, from the descriptions of the craft, And from what I've had whispered in my ear when I hear it mentioned, this sounds like the work of various secret space programs, which you may have encountered as a concept previously.
Right. Well, yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Do you think it is aliens involved, or do you think it's more government crafts or whatever, like you're saying?
Yeah, so I asked my liaison, I'm like, so like, whose are these? When somebody ever mentions UFOs, the first question I ask is not, okay, is this faked or not? My first question is, okay, if these are real, whose are they? Right? Because there's way more than one group out there that's producing these things.
Yeah.
And what has come back to me is that these are SSP craft. For the most part.
And I don't mean to sound stupid, but what does that mean?
Sorry, SSP is shorthand for Secret Space Program.
Okay.
Throughout, I guess you could say, recorded human history, there have been several civilizations who have created what I guess you could call breakaway civilizations. Basically, they achieved a technology much in excess of the others around them, or at least what was known publicly at the time, and they created a space civilization, a space branch of their civilization in secret. I know that the Mayans did this. I know that the Babylonians have their own, but also that the Nazis and the Americans had more than one, or have more than one. One name that's sometimes thrown around is Solar Warden. I know that one in particular appears to be real. And yeah, the whole Nazi thing, there are a lot of conspiracy theories about this, but I can tell you what I have personally confirmed with my own engagements against Nazi efforts is that they have ships in space. They had managed to take over at least one other 3D planet it was actually in the system of Altair. They managed to free themselves, and then they came here all bent on getting revenge for the Nazi invasion, only to realize that most of the planet was not aware that Nazis still existed. Right. Or their conception of Nazis were a bunch of skinheads demonstrating in some town somewhere, right? Not that most people around most people on this planet are not aware of the fact that the Nazis did not fizzle out in the 40s. They went to Antarctica, they went to Argentina, and they went to space. And we've clashed with them in Antarctica, and we've clashed with them in space. And yeah, as far as we're concerned, the only good Nazis are dead Nazis.
Yeah.
They're not pleasant people.
Well, I knowing what I know about their history,